Hello, I'm Janie Lantz.
And I'm Sue Hausmann.
Sue, we've made some interesting quilt blocks. We've done some things with trapunto and some things with stipple stitches. Do those require anything special with different battings?
Well, we thought we'd spend a little time talking about different types of battings and fillers because a quilt is generally a sandwich of top fabric, the inner batting or wadding, as they call it in the UK, and the backing of the quilt. And there are many different battings available to us today. Aren't we lucky?
Yes.
In the early days, our grandmothers had to use a cotton. In other words, if we looked through this early quilt, we would see loose cotton fibers in there. Many of them use blankets for that reason, older blankets and things. But we have so many different battings. In fact, it can be a little mind-boggling available to us. Here you see one that's perfect for clothing and for lightweight quilts. This is actually a very lightweight batting that is a polyester and nylon blend.
That would be good in your jacket.
And my jacket fabric was quilted and created on the frame with the long arm machine, and then the jacket was cut out and made. So this is the type of batting that's great for clothing, wall hangings, things like that. But you'll also find that when people think of batting in their new quilters, they usually think of puffy batting, and they usually think of polyester, which is a fiber that's very resilient. And if you're going to fold your quilts, you'll find they won't crease if you fold the polyester batting rather than a cotton type. But here's some different types of puffy batting. We use some of these in the trapunto video. I hope you've watched that one. If you haven't, go ahead and do so. But there's another lightweight fusible one that's polyester, craft bats, and then we're seeing more and more today that our quilters are using a needle punched or thinner type batting, sometimes punched into a very lightweight scrim, they call it. So there are a lot of different types of battings available, and some of them are a little thicker, some of them are a little thinner. I always say to people, just be sure that it's quality batting and that it doesn't feel like steel wool. I mean, some of the steel woolly type, really inexpensive battings, your needles will actually catch in them.
I see you even have one here that's made to keep things hot or cold.
Yeah, this would be used mostly for your hot pads, for cold type bags to bring the cold stuff home from. It's a insulated batting, 2 layers of polyester, needle punched into a thermal layer between them. So many different kinds. A favorite is to use a warm, very thin needle punch type batting and thermally bonded battings so that they stay together and for baby things. People want white because they do light colored fabric. So lots of these have some. There's the one for making the tater bags like we did on the 5D card shop, and the warm blend. So again, a blend batting won't crease as much as a all cotton. This is a lightweight, has much of the hand of the cotton battings that are the thinner needle punch, but it is 50-50.
Oh, so I bet that has a nice feel.
50 poly, 50 cotton. So we're not telling that any of these are something you shouldn't use. They all are things you may want to try. Depends how thick you want your quilt, how warm you want your quilt, and I would suggest trying different types. And you'll notice that I save the instructions that come with the batting because they will tell you how close together it needs to be needled. In other words, it'll say, quilt this every 5 inches, meaning you need to have some quilting within a 5-inch diameter area so that the batting stays well through many washings. This is one very popular today. It's 50 bamboo and 50 cotton. And so that's something that people are enjoying using for their quilting today, and organic cotton and bamboo.
I've used the bamboo and I really like it.
It is. It has a
nice
wonderful
fiber.
feel, and it handles beautifully on your long arm or on your hoop in quilting as well. Here's silk batting, which for very special projects and things. Again, it's not all silk. It's 90% silk, and they've got 10% polyester in there to keep it together, so that it'll stay together well. But this is a wonderful fiber to sleep under. Silk. Cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And then wool batting too, a very insulated, a little puffier than the silk, and a very insulated batting. So all of these are wonderful to use with your new 5D QuiltDesign creator. I mean, it will work just wonderfully. This one is actually a flame retardant. So many kinds of battings available. And I know that we want to show that when you use a puffier, heavier batting, your stitches need to be a little further apart. You want them to be further apart because it looks puffier, because that's why you're using puffy batting.
Right. So we created stipple blocks in another one of the videos, and we've also shown some trapunto techniques, as you mentioned. So let's look a little bit about here. If we do another quilt block with our new quilt block wizard and choose a filled quilt block and make a stipple stitch in it, we have several different ways that you can adjust the stitches to personalize it for your quilt. So one of the things that you can do is go into the options for the stipple stitches and increase how far apart the lines of stitches are, so it opens that stipple up.
It also might be how long you have to quilt it, particularly if you're doing frame quilting and you're doing all over stippling.
Yes.
You don't have to have it so close together. You could quilt a lot faster.
Yes, and actually a quilt that has stippling much tighter is going to be a firmer, harder quilt. If you want it softer and more drapey, put those stitches further apart. Now, the other thing that we'd want to look at, if we're quilting on a quilting robot, your quilting robot sets the stitch length. You tell it what stitch length to be, but when you're using embroidery, Sue, you're going to preset a stitch length before you export that embroidery design, and that's in your preferences.
Okay.
And you can choose actually different types of stitches. We have a running stitch, or you can use a triple stitch. You can set the stitch length in inches, or here you can see it popped up to show me millimeters as well, like you'd see on your sewing machine. And you can also set some other different effects, like a wobble look to make it look like it's free motion quilted, even though it's stitched in your embroidery machine.
How cool.
Yes.
So lots of options to actually create the quilting for the batting and the project that you have done in the size and the style and the stitch length and stitch type that you would like to have. You know, one other thing I wanted to address when we're talking about battings, people are always asking me, how do I use up small pieces? Or I bought my batting too small, I want to piece it. Very simple. Just select a 3-step zigzag on your sewing machine at a little longer stitch length than the widest width you have, and then simply butt the edges of the batting together, and you can see how these have been firmly put together, whether they're puffy or whether they're, in this case, the flatter cotton batting. It works beautifully. But I would like to share that we don't necessarily just have batting to add loft. So when we think of a quilting sandwich, it might have something else in between, or it might just be a lofty fabric. And here's an example of fleece, the type of fleece that you'd make like a polar fleece or alpine fleece jacket. And fleece has a lot of loft. And so you can use it as the loft in your quilting. So this is one of the easy block designs that I did a lot of things with, enjoyed using. You can see 2 layers under there. The minky fabrics have a nice loft and will be a nice filler in your quilt sandwich. And I was thinking even some of your microfibers would be that, but don't forget too that the new stable inside for tote bags and things that you'd like to be very stable but still soft. This is a foam with a tricot backing on both sides, and it can be quilted through, but here again you'd use a little longer stitch length.
Yes.
Makes it so easy.
It does.
And we have so much available to us today.
We do. All in 5D Quilt Design Creator.